Hello. Today I'll show you how NetSuite's MRP engine supports life sciences verticals such as RNA manufacturing, including raw material planning for nucleotides and enzymes, lot-controlled production, expiration management, and visibility into shortages before they impact batch production. This demo is applicable to life sciences verticals such as RNA manufacturing and also things like gene and cell therapy companies or biologics manufacturing. Really, anybody who wants to use MRP to have visibility into their demand, supply, and being able to keep a track of their inventory and place orders and build work orders before shortages become an issue. We're going to start here in NetSuite by taking a look at a lot numbered inventory item. Our lot numbered inventory item is set up so that we can track things like the lot numbers and expiration dates associated with these items. I'm going to scroll down. In the inventory management section here, we can see that I've set the replenishment method to materials requirements planning. This allows this item to be used with MRP in NetSuite. We have a bunch of fields here in the middle that are currently blank, as these fields are set at a location level down towards the bottom. You'll see these auto calculate checkboxes because NetSuite does have the ability to auto calculate things like your purchase lead time. It uses historical transactions of your purchase orders and your item receipts and calculates the time that it usually takes between placing that purchase order and receiving the order to calculate that lead time for you. If you don't want to have NetSuite calculate it for you, or you don't have enough historical data in the system yet for it to accurately calculate, you're able to come down here to the location sub-tab and set things like your purchase lead time by location. Other fields that you can set per location are safety stock levels, preferred stock levels, reorder points if you're using reorder point, the supply planning. You can also use lot sizing methods, and you can also set minimum order quantities per location down here in this location sub-tab. If we click over to the vendor sub-tab, you can see where you can set vendors for this item. You are able to set a vendor as the preferred vendor, and NetSuite will use this preferred vendor as the default vendor on purchase orders that are generated for this item. You will be able to select other vendors on purchase orders for this item. However, the preferred vendor is going to be the one that NetSuite defaults to. You can also set the purchase price for the item per vendor on this sub-tab. So in this example, we have our preferred vendor here is API Supplies, and it is purchasing this item from this vendor at $5 a unit. And we have CP&R Supplies where we're purchasing this item from that vendor at $6 a unit. We're going to switch over here to our lot numbered assembly item. This is our finished good item. So for our use case of an RNA manufacturer, this is the RNA finished good, which is an assembly item made up of other components. The components are set on our bill of materials and our bill of materials revision. If I click on the revision here, we can see that in this bill of materials revision, it is letting us know that to make our RNA finished product, we have a BOM quantity of 3 enzymes and 2 nucleotides that are consumed in the process of assembling our finished good item. On the bill of materials, we can see we have effective start dates and end dates. So you can have your revisions have start and end dates so that the current revision being used will be the current revision within your effective dates. You can also set revisions to be the default for a location, or you can have a revision set as the master default. So if there were multiple revisions for different locations, the master default would be used if there were no default for that location set. On the purchasing and inventory tab, Similarly, how we saw on the lot numbered inventory item, we have materials requirement planning set as a replenishment method. This one has the purchase lead time set to auto calculate. However, it's an assembly item, so we will actually be building this item. And we have down here at the location level a work order lead time set to 5 days. On the location lines here, you can also see we have a safety stock level set for this item of 10. Okay. So now that we've taken a look at our items and how they're set up and the bill of materials and the bill of materials revision, I want to switch to talking about how demand is created in NetSuite. Demand comes from a couple of different sources in NetSuite. We have sales orders and item demand plans. You can have MRP set up to look at either sales orders only, demand plans only, or a combination of orders and demand plans. And you can set it up to have this based on a per location level. You're also able to set it up so that your sales orders can consume forecast, but I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we look at the item demand plan. Here on our sales order, you can see here at the top, we have an alert letting us know that we have order lines that are not scheduled to be fulfilled by the supply required by date. Scrolling down to the line level, the supply required by date on the sales order is the date that is used in MRP. On this sales order, we see here that it was marked to be required by March 4th, but based on the purchase lead times and the work order lead times on the items, NetSuite is suggesting that we will likely not be able to fully fulfill this order until May 27th, and that it's expected to be 84 days late. And showing here the available quantity that is on hand and the committed quantity and how many is back ordered. So currently we have 39 of this item in stock. The order's for 40. So that means that one is going to be considered back ordered until we can get the orders placed and the work orders built. So the sales orders is one way for demand to be brought into NetSuite. The other option is to use the item demand plans. Now, these are CSV importable, so you don't have to enter them all in manually through the UI. The item demand plans can be set so you're tracking or you're forecasting demand monthly, as I have it here. You're also able to have it set daily or weekly if you need to have it set on to either of those levels as well. So for this sample item demand plan, I have here forecasted for February, a total of 75 of our finished good item, 100 for March, and 50 for April. Now, as I mentioned, you can have it set up so that your orders will consume your demand. So in this example here, if I have 50 ordered or forecasted for April, if I received an order for 100 in April, that 100 would consume this 50, and you would see on our supply planning workbench that we only still had a demand of 100 and not 150. I'll explain that a little further here as we look at our planning workbench. Now, our planning workbench is where you are able to see the supply and demand and the suggested orders for all of your items. So we have here our enzymes, our nucleotides, and our finished goods that are being worked on here in our planning workbench. And this is the summary where you can see kind of a summary of all of the items involved in this supply plan. But if we can click in and drill in to the demand over here, and now we can see what is creating all of the demand in NetSuite and the dates they're due. So we have safety stock that was set on some of those items, driving some of that demand. We have sales orders, as I mentioned, driving some of the demand, and the item demand plan. So as we saw here on our demand plan, we had 100 forecasted for March, but we don't have a line for the item demand plan for March because we have a sales order in March for 150. And so this 150 is consuming that line of demand from the demand plan of 100. So we see here we have our safety stock, sales orders, and then planned work orders in our demand tab. And in the supply tab, we can see we have purchase orders. This is an order that already exists in the system. We have on-hand quantity being counted as part of our supply. And then we also have planned purchase orders. If you click on this icon here, you can go into the pegging for any of the lines where we can see that this planned purchase order is pegged to this planned work order. We can look at the pegging on any of the lines to see what these lines of supply are meanting to fulfill for demand. So this on-hand quantity is going towards that safety stock number. If we click on the exception tab, we can see that NetSuite's letting us know that we have insufficient lead time for our proposed planned purchase order by 4 days. So that means we're 4 days late in placing our purchase order for this item in order to adequately meet the supply for that demand. From our supply page or tab, we can from here select purchase orders and work orders that we would like to release. So if I check this box on this purchase order and then on this planned work order and I click release selected orders, that's letting the system know to release those planned orders. I can click on the view status page and it's letting me know when that's complete. After you have released the orders from your supply planning workbench, that doesn't mean that the orders have been created as actual transactions in NetSuite yet. In order to actually place the purchase order, I'm going to go to supply planning and I'm going to go to order items. On the order items page, I'm going to go to planned orders. Now we can see we have the purchase orders that I went ahead and released here, the location that they're for, and the preferred vendor that was set on those items is selected here in this vendor field. If we wanted to place the order for another vendor and didn't want to order from our preferred vendor, you'd be able to use the drop down and select another vendor at this time before the purchase order is created. Here you can also update the quantity or the rate for the purchase order. Again, it is pulling this rate from that purchase price set on the item on the vendor for the preferred vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and check these boxes and I'm going to click submit. And we're going here to our process purchase order page. And this page is going to take a moment to process. So at this time, I'm going to pause the recording and I'll come back as soon as that order is processed. Okay, our purchase order has finished processing. The system has now generated PO 4447 for us. It has generated an approved status as we do not have a purchase order approval process set up here in this demo. However, if you have a purchase order approval process, this purchase order would then be able to be routed for approval as normal. I'm going to go to this purchase order. And we have our purchase order here for our enzymes and our nucleotides and the expected receipt date. I'm going to go ahead and receive this order. And here's where I can enter in the inventory detail to specify on these lot items, the lot number and expiration date for the items. So for our enzymes here, we are going to have a quantity of 420. I'm going to set an expiration date of next year. I'm receiving them in as the status of goods so they can be used on work orders or used to fulfill sales orders. If you select another status that indicates that the item is not in a good condition where it can be made available for fulfilling orders or being used on assembly builds, you would be able to set that status here, and then it would block the item from being used until it was set to a good status. So for example, if I wanted to receive them in a quarantine status and then after an inspection, we could do an inventory item status change to change them to good after they've been quarantined and inspected. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to accept our items in as good, but I wanted to make you aware that this is where you'd be able to initially set your inventory status for goods you're receiving. For the lot number, I'm going to do ABC. You can also capture additional information here on the item as needed, but for this demonstration, I'm just going to use expiration date and lot number. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for a nucleotide. Good. Expiration date. And number. Okay. And I'm going to save this item receipt. So the next thing I'm going to go through is we created a purchase order from the released orders that we released from our supply planning workbench. I'm going to go in and show you how to create a work order that we released. So I'm going to go to Mass Create Work Orders, go to the Planned Orders tab, and here are a couple of work orders that were released from our supply planning workbench. I'm going to go ahead and check the box on the work order here for the 50 items and click submit. And this is going to process. Again, it takes a few minutes to process, so I'm going to pause the recording and come right back as soon as this purchase or the work order is done processing. Okay, our work order has finished processing, so I'm going to click there, and we can see that the system has created work order 953 for us. I'm going to go into this work order. It is currently in a planned status, so I'm going to add it and switch the work order to released. If I scroll down, we can see here in our item sub list, we have our enzymes and our nucleotides in order to make our quantity of 50 units. We have our quantities of 150 and 100 of each of the components here. If I knew the inventory detail at this time while putting in the work order, I could enter in the inventory detail to indicate exactly which lots were going into this assembly build, but this information does not have to be entered on the work order level. It can be entered later in the assembly build if it is not known exactly which lots of these components are going to be used in this work order yet. I'm going to click save. And then I'm going to go ahead and click create build. Here on the assembly build transaction, as I mentioned before, this is where I can now enter in that inventory detail to indicate exactly which items were going to be consumed for this assembly build. This lot. So we have our 789 ABC lot. It's in a good status. It has an expiration date of next year. And we have a total of 450 available. But we need 150 for the assembly build, so I'll enter in that quantity there and click OK. On the nucleotide, As we can see, when I selected that serial lot number from the dropdown, I got this warning from NetSuite. So it looks like our item with the 123 demo 216 lot expired on the 16th. So NetSuite is warning us that we are about to pick an expired item to use in this assembly build. I can click OK and proceed with using this item if I wanted to, but NetSuite does warn you if the item that you're about to use is expired. You are able to do customization if you would like to block a user from selecting that lot number, but native NetSuite is just going to send a warning. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to go ahead and select this lot, which we know is going to be good, and it has an expiration date in the future, so no warning there. And I'm going to use the quantity of 100. I'm going to click OK and click Save. Not yet. I'm going to go to the inventory detail here. This is where I need to set the inventory detail for the item that we're building. So this is going to be where we set our quantity 50 that we're building, the expiration date. So let's set it for next year. And again, I can create this item in a inventory status of quarantine, or anything else that I would like to create in QA, anything like that. If we don't want to immediately have the item created in a good status. So again, if you have an inspection or something that needs to happen to the item after it is built, but before it is ready to be used, either in other assembly builds or on item fulfillments, you could set that status here when you're doing the assembly build to a status other than good in order to have it in that inspection status or whatever you need it to be until you've had a chance to perform that step. And then you'd be able to do an inventory status change to change it to good when you're ready for it to be available for use. I'm going to set this as click OK. Okay, now I can go ahead and click Save. Okay, now we have built our 50 items. And I want to show lot traceability. So if I go to reports, I can go down to lot serial trace and go to lot trace. So I know that it's important in a lot of life sciences and a lot of businesses like RNA manufacturing or other types of manufacturing that you are going to want to be able to trace exactly what lots were used for fulfilling what orders or used in what assembly build. So this lot trace reporting here is very useful in that you can see everything that went into your item. So I'm going to select our subsidiary of the United States. Then I'm going to select our item. I'm going to use our finished good item. And then the lot number that we just created. And I'm going to click submit. This lot trace report often takes a couple of minutes to generate, so I'm going to go ahead and pause recording again while it generates, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Our lot trace report has generated for us, so we are looking at our finished good item, specifically the NS12345 lot. We can see here on our components receipt tab, we have our finished good item, the lot serial number, the expiration date, and the work order that it was built on. And if I click this plus, It's going to open up and it's going to show us the components that went into our assembly build item, the lot numbers of the components, the expiration dates of the components, the purchase order that the components were purchased on, and the item receipt they were received on, along with their quantities, the receipt date, and also the vendor that they were received from. Similar information on the production tab, if we go ahead and expand that out. It's again showing us our components, the quantity used in production, the expiration date of everything, the date the production for a finished good item was completed, and location and subsidiary. If we were looking at an item that was consumed by another assembly, we would be able to see that information on the Consume By tab. If it was used to fulfill an order, we'd be able to see that on the Fulfillment tab, and then other transaction tabs as needed. That was everything that I wanted to show you all today in our demo. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any questions about how NetSuite's MRP process works, and specifically how it works and is beneficial for life sciences companies, let us know, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have on this process. Thank you all so much for joining, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon.